I showed up at my son's house unannounced on Thanksgiving 2026, hoping for warmth, only to be met with his cold words. Who invited you, old woman? This holiday is only for family. Leave. I walked away in silence, my heart heavy but not broken. The very next morning, everything began to change. I'm so grateful that you're here with me, listening to my story. Please like this video, stay with me until the very end, and let me know which city you're watching from. It means so much to see how far my story has reached, and I can't wait to share every moment with you. I came to my son's house without warning on Thanksgiving 2026. The air was crisp, the kind that makes your lungs ache slightly with cold, and I clutched my coat tighter around me. I told myself over and over, you are his mother. You are allowed to be here. Yet even as I knocked, part of me felt foolish, as if some invisible line had been drawn, separating me from the family I had once nurtured. The door opened slowly, revealing Brad. My son, taller now broader, the kind of man who had once been my little boy running to me with scraped knees and endless questions. But the boy I had raised was gone, replaced by someone who looked through me as if I were a stranger. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and there was a tension in his posture I didn't recognize. "What are you doing here?" he asked. His voice was calm, but it carried an edge that made my chest tighten. "I came to see you," I said softly. "It's Thanksgiving." He glanced over his shoulder toward the living room, where laughter and clinking dishes hinted at a family gathering in full swing. He returned his gaze to me, cold, almost clinical. "This is only for family," he said, closing the words like a door between us. I felt a sharp ache, a hollow sinking in my chest. "Family? I am family." "I am your family," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, aware of the trembling that threatened to rise. His jaw tightened, irritation flashing for the briefest moment. "You should have called." "I tried," I replied. "You didn't answer." Behind him, a woman laughed. A soft, easy laugh, unaware of the silent tension pressing against the doorway. Dishes clattered, voices rose in conversation, a television murmured in the background. Life was happening, just not with me in it. "You need to go," he said, as though I were some inconvenience rather than his mother. I looked past him, hoping to catch a glimpse of my grandchildren, Emma and Jack. My sweet Emma, who would be 10 this year, and Jack, 7 now, taller than the little boy who used to cling to my side in the kitchen. I wondered if Emma still bit her lip when she was nervous, if Jack still preferred dinosaurs over anything else, if they remembered me, if they even thought of me at all. "Are the kids here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His expression tightened further. "Don't do this," he said. "Please," I begged, my hand slightly lifting the pie I had baked in the early hours of the morning. The scent of cinnamon and pumpkin clung faintly to the crust, a reminder of all the Thanksgivings we had shared. "I just want to say hello." He stepped fully into the doorway, blocking my view. "You're causing a scene," he said, irritation now blending with a note of warning. I almost laughed, if only at the absurdity. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't cried. I hadn't threatened or demanded. I simply stood quietly, holding love in the form of a humble pumpkin pie, an offering from a grandmother who had never stopped caring. "I brought pumpkin," I said again, lifting it slightly, almost ceremoniously. He didn't look at it. "Take it with you," he said. "This holiday is for family." Something deep and fragile inside me cracked. Not loudly, not in a way anyone outside could see, but in that moment, a small part of my soul broke, recognizing the distance that had grown between us, the barrier I could no longer cross without permission. I nodded. "All right," I turned, walking away from the porch before he could see the full weight of my sorrow. The door closed behind me, leaving me with the muffled sounds of the life I had been cut out from. I lingered a moment longer, staring at the smooth grain of the wood, listening to laughter that should have been mine to hear. Then I walked to my car, fingers clutching the keys like a lifeline. Sitting behind the wheel, I rested my head against the steering wheel and let the first wave of grief wash over me. The tears didn't come immediately. Instead, there was only silence, a hollow, echoing emptiness that swallowed every sound, every hope I had brought with me. I drove home alone, taking the long way, not wanting to face the quiet of my apartment too soon. The city streets were crowded, festive with holiday lights, families gathering in homes I would never enter. The smell of roasted turkey, of pine, of cinnamon wafted from open windows, reminding me of the warmth that had been denied. That night, I ate Thanksgiving dinner alone, from a frozen tray, sitting at the small kitchen table where my son once did his homework, where I had read bedtime stories, where love had once flowed freely between us. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring, hoping for a miracle. It did not. And in that quiet, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. Something had gone terribly wrong, and the distance between us was no longer just physical. It was built on walls I didn't know how to tear down. I had come expecting reunion. What I found was the cold reality that love, without acknowledgement, could be denied. That sometimes, no matter how much you gave, how much you waited, you could be pushed out, replaced, forgotten. And yet, even in the hollow ache of that night, a spark remained. A small, stubborn flame that whispered, "This is not over. I am not finished. I will fight for what is mine." The next morning, I woke with the taste of yesterday's defeat still heavy on my tongue. My apartment, normally my refuge, felt smaller than ever. Every corner seemed to echo with memories of past Thanksgivings. The laughter of children, the smell of roasting turkey, the clatter of dishes, the warmth of family gathered around the table. All of it had been taken from me, replaced by a cold silence and the sharp sting of rejection. I poured coffee into my favorite mug, the one with the faded floral pattern Emma had painted for me years ago. I stared at the steam curling upward, as if it were a tiny ghost of the life I once had. My mind replayed every moment at Brad's doorstep, the way he'd blocked the doorway, the casual cruelty in his voice, Kimberly's laughter in the background. And through it all, the thought that haunted me most was, what have they told the children? Emma and Jack, my grandchildren. My heart twisted imagining the lies, the misdirections, the explanations designed to keep me away. Brad's words, "This is only for family," cut through me again. Family? My mind refused to accept it. I was their grandmother. I always had been, I always would be. No court order, no marriage, no arbitrary rule could erase that. I spent the morning calling Janet, my paralegal and closest ally through this ordeal. She picked up on the third ring, cheerful as always, but I could hear the concern threading through her tone. "Margaret," she said, "are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I went there Thanksgiving, I knocked, I tried. They wouldn't let me in." My voice cracked despite my best efforts. There was a pause. Then, softly, Janet said, "We expected resistance. This is Brad we're talking about, but Margaret, you did the right thing. You showed up, that's the first step. The rest we'll handle." I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I don't know if showing up was enough. They have this fortress around themselves and the kids. I feel like I've been shut out forever. "You haven't," Janet reassured me. "You just need the right leverage. Documentation, records, testimony, we have it. Your calls, your emails, the letters you sent. This is solid. We'll prove your access is being unfairly denied. You're not alone in this." Hearing her words, I felt a small measure of relief. It wasn't over. I had allies. And even if Brad and Kimberly had tried to rewrite the story, there were ways to reveal the truth. By mid-morning, I was drafting a timeline of events. Every attempt to contact my grandchildren, every ignored phone call, every unopened letter, every message left unanswered. The list was painstaking. Phone calls, 42. Emails, 27. Letters, 12. Social media posts, dozens, showing birthday parties and holidays I hadn't been invited to, evidence of their lives continuing without me. I labeled each item carefully, annotating dates and screenshots. This would be Exhibit A in court, the undeniable record of exclusion. I paused for a moment, overwhelmed by the meticulousness of it all. I had never imagined spending hours cataloging my pain, but this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Emma and Jack. They deserved their grandmother. They deserved truth, presence, and the love I had never stopped offering. Lunch came and went, though I barely noticed. I was immersed in the timeline, in the exhibits I would submit. I wanted everything precise, irrefutable. If they thought they could erase me quietly, I would make sure that erasure left a record. By late afternoon, Janet arrived at my apartment, carrying files, a laptop, and an air of calm determination that always steadied me. "Ready?" she asked, settling into the chair across from me. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said, straightening my back. We spent hours organizing the evidence, rehearsing the narrative, anticipating objections. Janet was meticulous, pointing out inconsistencies in Brad and Kimberly's prior statements, suggesting ways to present the children's history in a way that highlighted patterns of avoidance and exclusion. As evening fell, I looked out my window at the fading light. Thanksgiving lights twinkled on distant houses. Families gathered, shared meals, laughter drifting into the night. A pang of longing struck me again. But this time it was tempered with determination. I would not let another holiday pass without my grandchildren. "Tomorrow," Janet said softly, closing her laptop, "we submit the petition. We show the judge everything. You are going to see them, Margaret. You're going to fight for them and win." I felt a lump in my throat. "I hope so. I just want them to know the truth." I want them to know I never stopped loving them. You will, she said firmly. And they will, that's why we fight. That night I lay awake, memories of Emma and Jack flooding my mind. Their little faces, their voices, the tiny hands that had once held mine. I pictured our reunion, careful but sincere, filled with love and honesty. I imagined baking cookies together, reading stories, laughing again as if no time had passed. Sleep came fitfully, dreams tangled with fear and hope. I woke before dawn, resolve hardening in my chest. The fight had begun, and I was ready. Tomorrow, we would step into the courtroom. And this time, I would not leave without my grandchildren. The morning of the court hearing arrived colder than I expected. A faint frost dusted my car windshield, and the sky was a pale gray, a muted reflection of my nerves. Janet had insisted on arriving early, and we parked a block from the courthouse to avoid confrontation. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the petition folder, the thick stack of exhibits I'd spent hours organizing the previous day. Each page was a piece of my fight, a chronicle of exclusion, a testament to my relentless love for Emma and Jack. Walking into the courthouse, I felt a mixture of dread and resolve. Families bustled in, lawyers consulted, bailiffs moved efficiently through the halls. But I felt invisible, hyper-aware of every whisper, every glance that might judge a grandmother trying to reclaim her rightful place. Janet stayed close, her presence calming, grounding. She whispered a quick strategy refresher as we waited outside the courtroom. Stick to the facts, Margaret. Show your attempts to reach them, the social media evidence, the letters, the money you sent. No emotions, no embellishments, just truth. Truth, that was all I had, and it was more powerful than any resentment, any anger they might throw at me. When the judge called the case, we rose. Brad and Kimberly were already seated, their expressions carefully neutral, but the tension around them was palpable. Their lawyer looked practiced, confident, but I could see the subtle twitch in his jaw. Perhaps he, too, sensed this battle would not go in their favor. The judge, an imposing woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense, asked everyone to be seated. I arranged my folder on the table, flipping open to Exhibit A, the timeline. My hands were steadier now, the fear replaced by a clear, unwavering determination. Janet whispered, "You've got this. Just tell the story exactly as it happened." I began, "Your Honor, over the past 2 years, I have made every effort to maintain contact with my grandchildren, Emma and Jack Sherman. I have documented 42 phone calls, 27 emails, and 12 letters, all ignored. Social media evidence shows multiple family gatherings I was not invited to, including birthdays and holidays. I have also sent $18,000 for their education, which was never returned, despite being denied visitation." I watched Brad shift uncomfortably. Kimberly's hands clenched together on the table, knuckles white. Their lawyer opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand. Silence. The room felt heavy, charged with tension. "Your Honor," I continued, "I also received a letter from my son and daughter-in-law offering quarterly photos in exchange for dropping this petition. This was an attempt to silence me while providing minimal access to my grandchildren. They have allowed the children to believe false narratives about my whereabouts, creating confusion, emotional distress, and alienation." The judge's eyes narrowed, and she asked Brad directly, "Did you send this letter?" He stammered, avoiding eye contact. We were trying to find a compromise." "A compromise," the judge said, voice sharp, "would involve actual visitation, not photographs once every few months. Did you or did you not tell your children their grandmother had moved to Arizona?" The silence was deafening. Even Kimberly couldn't form a coherent response. Her lips pressed together, eyes darting to the floor. "Mr. Sherman, answer the question," the judge demanded. His shoulders slumped slightly, a flash of guilt passing over his face. "It was a misunderstanding," he muttered. "Emma asked, and I said you'd moved." The judge's expression hardened. "What you call a misunderstanding, this court calls parental alienation. You have actively interfered with Mrs. Hayes' relationship with her grandchildren while accepting her financial contributions." I felt a small relief wash over me. Justice had a heartbeat, and I could feel it now. Janet and I watched as the courtroom settled into a tense silence. "We will order a court-appointed child psychologist to interview Emma and Jack," the judge said. "Their findings will determine the next steps. Any attempts to manipulate or misrepresent the truth will result in expanded visitation rights for Mrs. Hayes." As the gavel fell, Brad and Kimberly left in silence, their defeat barely contained. I exhaled slowly, the weight of the fight pressing down but also lifting slightly. This was only the beginning. but for the first time, I sensed a path forward. I would see my grandchildren again, and I would not stop until they knew the truth. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook, planning the next moves, imagining the court psychologist's report and how it could expose the truth. Every memory of Emma and Jack, their laughter, their trust, the times we'd spent together, fueled my determination. I would fight this piece by piece until my grandchildren knew they were loved and I would not be erased. 2 weeks later, Janet called with news that set my heart racing. Margaret, the psychologist's report is in. You need to see this immediately. I barely managed to put on my coat before we drove over to her office, the car ride a blur of nervous anticipation. My mind ran in circles. How had Emma and Jack been affected? Would they even remember me? Would they be angry? I clenched the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. Janet handed me the folder, and I opened it with trembling hands. The pages were dense with observations, psychological analysis, and notes from interviews with Emma and Jack, both separately and together. My eyes scanned the findings, and I could feel my chest tighten as the reality hit me. Emma, aged 10, had been confused and sad, asking repeatedly why her grandmother had disappeared. She had cried during her sessions, the psychologist noting signs of guilt and a belief that she had somehow caused me to leave. Jack, 7, had been initially quiet, withdrawn, and hesitant, but when prompted about memories of our time together, he revealed a deep sense of loss, thinking his grandmother might be dead. The report detailed that both children had been subjected to what the psychologist identified as parental alienation. Misleading statements, avoidance, and omissions had created an environment where Emma and Jack questioned their grandmother's love and existence. Specific examples included the Arizona story, invented by their parents to stop questioning, and repeated statements implying I was too busy or no longer interested in them. The psychologist's conclusion was unequivocal. The children's emotional well being had been harmed, and immediate intervention was necessary. Tears pricked my eyes as I read, but they were not just tears of sorrow. They were relief, validation, and anticipation. Janet placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Margaret, the report is clear. You will see them and the court will back you. It's time to reclaim your grandchildren. The final hearing was scheduled for March 5th. I spent the days leading up to it carefully preparing. I organized my thoughts, reviewed my notes, and rehearsed how to present the evidence clearly and calmly. I reminded myself repeatedly that this was about Emma and Jack, not about anger or revenge. I wanted to be strong, composed, and unwavering. On the morning of the hearing, the courthouse was more crowded than before. Supporters from the grandparents' rights community had arrived, along with Janet and her paralegal. Their presence bolstered me, a reminder that I was not alone. Brad and Kimberly appeared more tense than I'd ever seen them, exchanging anxious glances and fidgeting as they waited for the proceedings to begin. Their lawyer tried to project confidence, but the subtle tremor in his voice betrayed the stress he was under. The judge entered, commanding attention with her presence. Everyone rose, then sat as she began reviewing the case. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped forward and addressed the court calmly, presenting the psychologist's report. Your Honor, Doctor. Chen's findings clearly demonstrate that my grandchildren have been subjected to intentional obfuscation about my whereabouts and well being. Emma and Jack have suffered confusion, guilt, and emotional harm due to parental alienation tactics. The courtroom was silent. Even Brad and Kimberly had no words, their expressions unreadable. The judge examined the report, then looked directly at them. Mr. and Mrs. Sherman, the evidence is clear. You have harmed your children emotionally by denying them access to their grandmother, while simultaneously accepting financial support from her. This court finds your actions reprehensible and orders corrective measures immediately. A sense of vindication washed over me, but I kept my composure. I knew the fight was not yet over, but this was a pivotal moment. Emma and Jack would finally have clarity, the chance to rebuild their relationship with me, and to understand the love that had never wavered. As the gavel fell, I felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. Outside the courthouse, supporters hugged me, their congratulations warm and heartfelt. Janet smiled, tears in her eyes. You've done it, Margaret. This is the turning point. Now it's time to be with them. That evening, I sat alone in my kitchen, reviewing the report again. I allowed myself a quiet smile. In just 2 weeks, I would see Emma and Jack, explain the truth, and begin the slow process of healing. The thought filled me with both nervousness and hope. I had fought tirelessly, and now the door to my grandchildren's lives was reopening. I vowed that every moment with them would be filled with love, patience, and understanding, to repair what had been broken, and to ensure they knew they had never been abandoned. March 20th arrived, the day of my first official visit with Emma and Jack since the court order. My house had never felt more alive or more anxious. I cleaned and rearranged the living room, making sure there was space for their favorite activities, puzzles, books, and a corner for drawing. The scent of chocolate chip cookies lingered from earlier in the morning, a small piece of comfort from our shared past. The clock crept closer to 10 o'clock a.m., and my heart pounded in my chest. The doorbell rang. I opened it to see Brad and Kimberly standing stiffly, holding Emma and Jack close by the hands. Their expressions were unreadable, somewhere between resentment and defeat. Emma's eyes were red, Jack clinging quietly to her side. I knelt to their level, speaking softly. "Hi, my babies, I've missed you so much." Emma hesitated, then gave a small nod. Jack's eyes darted between me and his parents. Brad said curtly, "Be back by 6 p.m." I smiled calmly, holding Jack's hand. "I'll make sure they're back safe and happy at 7 p.m. as the court order states." He bristled but said nothing. Kimberly's jaw tightened, her gaze flicking to the floor. Once they left, the weight of the moment hit me. The house was mine, even if only for a day, and I would fill every second with love. We started slowly. I showed them their old toys, the photo albums, and birthday cards I had kept through the years. Emma's fingers traced the covers of the albums, whispering, "You kept everything?" "Of course," I said gently. "You and Jack are my family. Nothing you ever made or gave me was ever forgotten." Jack tentatively explored the room, finding the quilt I'd sewn for him as a baby. He ran his fingers over the fabric, and a small, uncertain smile broke through his tension. After a quiet morning of rediscovery, we moved to the kitchen. Flour dusted our hands and countertops as Jack cracked eggs for cookie dough. Emma carefully measured chocolate chips, sneaking a few into her mouth and giggling when I caught her. The warmth of the oven, the smell of baking, and their laughter slowly melted the tension. I watched them, realizing that these simple acts, baking cookies, laughing over spills, sharing stories, were what I had been missing for 2 long years. Lunch was grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, our comfort food ritual. Emma talked about her art projects, showing me drawings she had kept hidden in her school folder. Jack described his baseball team's last game, his excitement finally breaking through the walls built by fear and confusion. We laughed, argued playfully over whose sandwich had more cheese, and slowly, the day unfolded with a sense of reclaimed normalcy. The afternoon was for games and outdoor fun. We walked to the park, threw a frisbee, and climbed on the swings. Their initial hesitancy gradually faded. Emma's laughter rang freely as Jack ran ahead unafraid. I marveled at the resilience of children, their ability to adapt, and yet I could see the lingering shadows of the past, the hurt their parents' lies had caused, the trust they needed to rebuild. By the time we returned home, it was late afternoon. Emma and Jack were tired but happy. We sat together on the couch, reading stories aloud. Emma rested her head on my shoulder while Jack leaned against my side, both seeking comfort and connection. I felt a surge of gratitude and resolve. I had fought for this moment, and I would continue to fight for every moment to come. Evening approached, and it was time for them to leave. I walked them to the door, giving each of them a long, tight hug. Emma whispered, "I'm glad you're here, Grandma." Jack's small hand squeezed mine. "I missed you," he said softly. I promised we would see each other soon, more often than ever before, and meant every word. As the car drove away, I stood on the porch, watching them leave with a mixture of triumph and longing. The battle had not yet ended, but the first victory was complete. They had returned to me, and together, we would begin the slow process of healing, rebuilding trust, and filling the years lost with love, laughter, and shared memories that could never be taken away again. The days after that first visit became a rhythm of hope and careful rebuilding. Every third weekend, Emma and Jack came to stay, and each time, the walls between us crumbled a little more. The tension in their bodies gradually eased, replaced with laughter and tentative trust. I noticed Jack's curiosity growing. He asked endless questions about his baby pictures, the stories behind each card, each toy. Emma's questions were more complex, reflective. She wanted to understand why things had gone so wrong, why the lies had been told. I answered honestly, without blame, explaining that sometimes adults make terrible choices out of fear and control, but that did not erase the love we shared. We created small rituals, anchoring ourselves in new memories. Every Sunday, we made pancakes together. Emma insisted on stirring the batter, Jack on flipping the pancakes, each giggle and splash of flour cementing our bond. We celebrated birthdays, half birthdays, and even small victories in school or sports. Slowly, the children began to realize that their grandmother had never abandoned them, and that the love they had imagined lost was still very much alive. Meanwhile, the family therapy sessions mandated by the court began. Dr. Chen's office became a tense battlefield of truth and denial. Brad and Kimberly arrived reluctantly, defensive and resistant. Their posture screamed discomfort, their words defensive and clipped. Emma and Jack often sat quietly, observing their parents' behavior, while I held a steady presence beside them, a safe space where honesty could exist without punishment. Doctor Chen guided the sessions with patience, asking pointed questions and observing interactions. It was evident the children's confusion stemmed not just from lies, but from the constant tension between their parents and me. One afternoon, Emma finally voiced what had been simmering inside her. Grandma, why did they tell me you moved away? Why didn't they let me call you? Her voice was trembling, the hurt raw and honest. I held her hands, meeting her gaze. Sweetheart, they made a mistake, a very big mistake, but it's not your fault. And it's never too late to fix things. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jack, quieter but equally affected, leaned against me, his small arms wrapping around my waist. I held them both, silently promising that I would never let them feel abandoned again. Outside our home, life moved forward. Brad's reputation in the community began to fray. The whispers at school, the cautious glances from neighbors, and the subtle distancing of friends made the household atmosphere tense. Kimberly's drinking increased, and Emma occasionally mentioned it in passing, her observations both innocent and piercingly accurate. I felt a mix of sorrow and grim satisfaction. While I wanted nothing to harm the children, the consequences of deceit were catching up to the adults who had tried to erase me. As the months progressed, the visits became more fluid. Emma and Jack grew comfortable in our home, engaging fully in our activities. We planted flowers in the garden, read entire books in a single afternoon, and cooked meals together. Jack took pride in the pizza he made from scratch, while Emma experimented with decorating cupcakes. Each laugh, each question, each shy glance towards me was a step toward reclaiming the years lost. I recorded videos of our days together, little keepsakes to show them later how far we had come, how resilient love could be. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the backyard, Carol stopped by for tea. We sat on the porch, watching the children play in the sprinkler, their laughter carrying on the wind. You did it, Carol said softly, a mixture of awe and pride in her eyes. You fought for them, and you won. I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest that no court ruling or legal victory could ever replicate. This was living proof that persistence, honesty, and love could mend even the deepest wounds. The court mandated therapy sessions continued to document progress. Dr. Chen noted that Emma and Jack were beginning to distinguish truth from deception, understanding that their parents' actions were not a reflection of their worth or of my love for them. Brad and Kimberly, resistant as ever, faced mounting pressure to reconcile with reality, but the children's loyalty had begun to shift, quietly but unmistakably, toward me. By late spring, I realized something profound. The house that had felt empty for years now vibrated with life. The children's presence filled every corner with energy, curiosity, and laughter. Each hug, each question, each shared smile was a testament to the resilience of family, the power of love, and the irrepressible bond between a grandmother and her grandchildren. And I knew, deep in my heart, that we were just beginning a journey that would rebuild not just weekends and holidays, but trust, joy, and the certainty of belonging. The weeks following the first few visits became a delicate balance of rebuilding trust and creating new memories. Emma and Jack began to adjust to the rhythm of our weekends together, their laughter slowly replacing the cautious hesitation that had greeted me at the door. Every morning, they would bound down the stairs with sleepy eyes but bright smiles, ready to dive into our carefully planned activities. We explored the neighborhood, riding bikes along tree-lined streets, stopping to watch birds at the park, and occasionally treating ourselves to ice cream cones dripping with chocolate and sprinkles. The simple joy of these moments felt revolutionary after years of separation. At home, I introduced them to small routines that had been part of their lives long ago, subtly weaving continuity into their disrupted childhood. Emma, who had grown so independent, delighted in helping me set the table, folding napkins and arranging silverware as if she were preparing for a formal tea. Jack, ever the curious one, wanted to help with everything, asking endless questions about the plants in the garden, the birds that nested nearby, and why flour made such a mess when used for baking. I answered with patience, letting their curiosity guide our days. These rituals, small and ordinary, became anchors of stability in their lives. The court mandated family therapy sessions remained tense. Brad and Kimberly continued to resist, their defensiveness often erupting into heated exchanges with Dr. Chen. But the children's perspective was shifting. Emma, once anxious and mistrustful, began to speak with clarity and courage, expressing her feelings about the lies she had been told. Jack, though quieter, increasingly sought comfort from me, gradually shedding the uncertainty that had weighed on him for so long. In one session, Emma asked directly why her parents had lied about me moving away. The room went silent. Brad and Kimberly avoided eye contact, and I felt a quiet satisfaction as the truth began to emerge, guided by the careful questioning of Dr. Chen. Back at home, I started introducing projects that connected the past with the present. We pulled out old photo albums, reliving memories I had preserved over the years. Emma traced her fingers over pictures of her baby self, murmuring softly about forgotten moments. Jack laughed at images of his first baseball games, pointing out how tiny he had been. These shared reflections became a bridge, reconnecting them to a grandmother they had thought lost. Each story I told was a thread in a tapestry of love, slowly mending the tear that had been caused by lies. One rainy afternoon, we tackled a long-standing project, building a birdhouse together. Emma designed it with care, Jack handled the hammer with intense focus, and I guided them through each step, making sure safety and fun went hand in hand. By the end of the day, a brightly painted birdhouse hung from a tree in the backyard, a symbol of our efforts and patience. We watched as a pair of sparrows investigated their new home, and the children cheered. These moments, so simple yet profound, reinforced the trust that had been broken for so long. Outside our home, the ripple effects of the court case continued to be felt. Brad and Kimberly's social circle remained strained. Dinner invitations had dwindled, and whispers followed them wherever they went. Work pressures mounted for Brad, who struggled to maintain composure at the office while grappling with the ongoing legal and familial challenges. Kimberly's frustrations became more visible, and the children occasionally mentioned her irritability in passing, their observations both innocent and telling. I remained focused on my grandchildren, determined to provide stability and love amidst the chaos that their parents had created. By late summer, our bond was undeniable. The children moved through the house with ease, their laughter filling every corner. Emma, now more confident and assertive, took pride in her accomplishments at school and shared them eagerly. Jack, growing in self-assurance, delighted in teaching me new baseball techniques he had learned. Each interaction strengthened our connection, and I noticed subtle changes in their demeanor. Less anxiety, more curiosity, and an increasing willingness to engage openly with me. The court-mandated therapy sessions documented this progress, highlighting the resilience of the children and the positive impact of consistent love and attention. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emma leaned against me. "Grandma," she said softly, "I'm glad you didn't give up on us." Jack chimed in with a shy smile, "Me too." I hugged them both, feeling a profound sense of relief and triumph. Years of separation, confusion, and hurt were slowly being replaced by trust, joy, and the certainty of belonging. The fight had been long and difficult, but every laugh, every hug, and every shared moment reaffirmed that love, true, persistent love, could overcome even the deepest wounds. Autumn arrived, painting the trees in shades of gold and crimson, and with it came a new sense of rhythm in our lives. Emma and Jack's visits were no longer tentative. They arrived at my door with excitement, each carrying stories from school, friends, and hobbies. The kitchen had become our sanctuary, smells of cinnamon, baking bread, and fresh coffee blending with laughter and conversation. I had begun recording small moments, writing them in a journal, capturing the intricate details of their expressions, the way Jack scrunched his nose when concentrating, the way Emma's eyes lit up when she discovered a new fact about history or art. Each page was a testament to the time we had lost and were now reclaiming. One chilly Saturday, I suggested we visit the Old Town Museum. Emma, clutching her sketchbook, wanted to draw the exhibits. Jack, more interested in the science wing, dragged me toward the model train display. Walking hand in hand with them through the museum's quiet halls, I realized how much they had missed, how many ordinary experiences their parents had withheld, either through avoidance or manipulation. I explained exhibits with stories from our family, weaving together personal history with public knowledge. giving them a sense of continuity that had been absent for years. For once, I could answer their questions honestly, without hesitation, without fear of what Brad or Kimberly had told them. The family therapy sessions were increasingly intense. Doctor. Chen had grown more direct, calling out Brad and Kimberly's behaviors with clarity and authority. Emma, once shy, now voiced her emotions with precision. "You told me my grandmother moved away," she said in one session, her voice firm. "But she never left, you lied to me," Jack added quietly. "I thought she was dead." "That wasn't true either, was it?" Their parents could only squirm, their defenses faltering under the children's honesty. The room was tense, but Dr. Chen guided the dialogue carefully, ensuring that the children's trust in me was acknowledged and reinforced. I remained calm, offering reassurance and validating their feelings, letting them know that none of this had been their fault. At home, I introduced new traditions. Friday evenings became movie nights, complete with blankets, popcorn, and debates over which film to watch. I taught Jack how to make scrambled eggs just right, letting him crack the eggs himself, while Emma learned the subtle art of perfectly timing pancakes. We celebrated small victories, Emma mastering a particularly tricky art project, Jack finally hitting a home run at practice, always with laughter and praise. Gradually, I noticed subtle but profound changes. Emma began initiating conversations, sharing thoughts she had once kept private, and Jack relaxed, trusting that his questions would be answered without judgment. Outside the house, the impact of the court ruling rippled quietly. Brad and Kimberly's social circles remained strained. At neighborhood events, I occasionally saw them at a distance, their interactions awkward, the children sometimes glancing at them with subtle defiance or skepticism. Work-related pressures weighed heavily on Brad, who seemed distracted and irritable during calls with his colleagues. Kimberly, meanwhile, struggled with frustration and resentment that occasionally spilled into casual conversations, revealing the stress of losing control over the narrative she had tried to maintain for so long. I focused only on the children, giving them consistency and stability amidst the chaos of their parents' world. Late October brought Halloween, a new milestone for us to celebrate together. Emma and Jack helped me carve pumpkins, their tiny hands working with concentration and laughter. We dressed in homemade costumes, Emma as a princess, Jack as a superhero, and walked through the neighborhood, collecting candy and sharing smiles with neighbors. For the first time in years, our family celebrations felt complete, filled with joy, creativity, and freedom. Afterward, we returned home to hot cocoa and a cozy fire, recounting the evening with delight. These small, ordinary moments held immense significance after years of absence, their simplicity masking the emotional weight they carried. By November, I began to notice deeper changes in Emma and Jack. They expressed more nuanced emotions, understanding their feelings about the past, and demonstrating empathy for each other and for me. Emma, thoughtful and perceptive, asked questions about why her parents had acted as they did, processing betrayal with intelligence and heart. Jack, sensitive and introspective, confided small fears and hopes, gradually letting go of the confusion that had plagued him for years. Together, we navigated these conversations carefully, building resilience while reaffirming love, creating a foundation that no lie could undo. One quiet evening, I watched the children reading together on the living room couch. Emma's head rested lightly on Jack's shoulder, Jack's small hand holding hers. Their faces were relaxed, peaceful, safe. I realized that despite the pain, the months of legal battles, the manipulation and deception they had endured, we were reclaiming something precious and unbreakable. The journey was far from over, but the bridge between us had been rebuilt, sturdy and enduring. And for the first time in years, I could truly say, I was home with my grandchildren, and our family, though tested, was healing. Thanksgiving was approaching again, and this year, I wanted it to be about the children, about creating memories untainted by the lies and fears of the past. Emma and Jack had asked to help with the preparations, and I agreed wholeheartedly. We baked pies, decorated the house, and even made handmade cards for friends who had supported us through the court battle. Their laughter filled every corner, a sharp contrast to the silent tension that had once defined our gatherings. I watched them carefully, noting how freely they moved, how confidently they spoke, how their eyes no longer darted anxiously at imagined threats. The children were healing, piece by piece, and I was grateful for every moment. On the morning of Thanksgiving, I suggested a quiet walk through the nearby park before the cooking began. Emma held my hand tightly, Jack ran ahead and back, laughing, collecting fallen leaves. I breathed deeply, taking in the crisp air, the sounds of rustling branches, the distant hum of city life. For years, I had imagined moments like this, longed for them, and now they were real. When we returned home, the house smelled of roasted turkey, spiced cider, and baked apples. The table was set with care, the napkins folded, the centerpiece a bouquet of seasonal flowers the children had chosen. Every detail mattered, every gesture a small act of reclaiming the warmth and normalcy that had been stolen from us. I had not informed Brad or Kimberly of our plans, choosing instead to focus entirely on the children. Their reactions, when they learned of our gathering, were irrelevant. This Thanksgiving belonged to Emma, Jack, and me. Around 11 a.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find them standing there, Emma clutching her backpack, Jack holding his jacket, faces hesitant but expectant. Neither smiled immediately. Their parents had clearly instructed them on behavior, but the children had grown resilient enough to resist the tension. Hi, babies, I said gently, crouching to meet their eyes. I'm so happy you're here. Today is just for us. Their eyes brightened fractionally, a tiny spark of relief and excitement breaking through the nervous energy that still lingered. We spent the morning preparing food together. Jack, now skilled with small tasks, helped baste the turkey, while Emma arranged the vegetables and hummed quietly as she worked. I told stories of past Thanksgivings, of family traditions, of moments when love had carried us through hard times. Emma and Jack listened intently, occasionally asking questions, sharing memories they had of holidays past, and even inventing new games to play while the pies cooled. The kitchen was alive with movement, chatter, and the aroma of spices, a stark contrast to the silent dinners we had endured during years of estrangement. As noon approached, I prepared a small surprise, a memory box for each child. Inside were photos from our recent visits, a few items from their early childhood, and letters I had written them over the years, never sent, but preserved for moments like this. Emma opened hers first, her hands trembling slightly. She lifted a photograph of us baking together weeks ago, tears forming in her eyes. You really kept all this? She whispered. Jack, more reserved, ran his fingers over a baseball card and a small handwritten note from me. I can't believe it, he murmured, voice barely audible, a mixture of awe and disbelief. These were pieces of a past stolen, now returned. The afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, conversation, and games. We played board games, built Lego sets, and even watched an old family video that had been hidden away for years. The children's laughter was unrestrained, their joy genuine. For the first time in years, I saw them not as children trapped between conflicting truths, but as themselves, curious, loving, resilient. There were moments when Emma glanced toward the door, moments of lingering caution, but each time she returned her attention to our world, safe and grounded. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, we gathered around the table for our Thanksgiving meal. I held Jack's small hand as Emma said grace, her voice soft but confident. Every bite of food carried the flavor of victory, of reclaimed love, of resilience. We spoke of gratitude, of the things we had fought for, of the people who had stood by us. And though shadows of the past lingered faintly, the warmth of the present overpowered them. This Thanksgiving was ours, unbroken and complete. By evening, as the children prepared to leave, they hugged me tightly, and for the first time the embrace felt mutual, not hesitant or cautious. Thank you, Grandma, Emma whispered. Jack nodded quietly, his eyes shining. As they walked toward the car, I felt a profound sense of peace. The battle was far from over. Brad and Kimberly still loomed in their lives. But today belonged to love, to family, to truth restored. And I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we had reclaimed what mattered most, each other. The weeks after that Thanksgiving became a rhythm of healing, discovery, and cautious trust. Emma and Jack settled into our routine seamlessly. Every third weekend, they arrived at my house with backpacks, sports gear, and the unspoken excitement that only children could carry after months of absence. The first few hours were always the hardest. They reminded me of the tension that had once hung over every visit. But slowly, the walls between us crumbled. We had movie nights where popcorn scattered across the carpet, rainy afternoons building forts from blankets and couch cushions, and evenings spent reading aloud from books that had been waiting patiently on the shelf. Every story, every shared laugh, every quiet moment stitched our hearts closer together. Brad and Kimberly had grown more desperate. Their resistance to the court-mandated family therapy had not waned. If anything, it had intensified. Dr. Chen reported their defiance in weekly updates. Brad snapping at minor things, Kimberly walking out mid-session in frustration, both feigning cooperation while subtly trying to undermine the children's newfound trust in me. Emma, perceptive and articulate, would occasionally whisper observations during our visits. "They're mad because you didn't go away," she said one afternoon, pressing her small hand into mine. "They wanted me to forget about you. But I won't." Jack, quieter but equally aware, nodded along, hugging his favorite stuffed animal. The children were beginning to understand manipulation, to identify it for what it was, and in doing so, they reclaimed pieces of their own childhood. One afternoon, I decided it was time to introduce a new tradition. I called it the memory tree. In the backyard, we planted a young oak, its branches small but reaching toward the sky. We each wrote a wish or memory on a paper leaf and tied it to the branches. Emma chose memories of summer vacations, of stories I had told, and of moments when she had felt truly safe with me. Jack wrote about baseball games, chocolate chip cookies, and our first museum trip together. I added my own leaves: gratitude for our reunion, hope for their future, and a promise that I would always be there. We stepped back to admire our work, the tree swaying gently in the breeze. It was more than a symbol. It was a declaration of our resilience, of love that had survived lies and years of separation. The children were thriving in school, too. Emma, once shy and withdrawn, had begun participating in art contests and writing essays about her experiences. Jack, who had been hesitant and confused, now confidently joined his baseball team, proudly displaying the skills I had watched him develop during our visits. The school noticed the difference. Teachers reported improved focus, confidence, and social interaction. And though Brad and Kimberly attempted to control narratives at home, the children's newfound independence and understanding often neutralized their efforts. Every small victory felt monumental. Socially, the repercussions for Brad and Kimberly intensified. Neighbors who had once smiled politely now whispered behind their backs. Invitations that had flowed freely before now ceased. Family friends questioned their actions, their credibility, their honesty. The community had witnessed the unraveling of their carefully constructed lives. Meanwhile, Emma and Jack experienced growing support from extended family, friends, and mentors who had long advocated for their well being. They learned that love and truth could survive even when deception had been pervasive, that resilience was possible, and that standing up for oneself could bring profound rewards. I worked tirelessly to strengthen the children's understanding of boundaries, self respect, and emotional health. We practiced role playing scenarios, discussed feelings openly, and made sure the children felt empowered to express themselves without fear. Emma began keeping a journal, pouring her emotions onto paper, while Jack found solace in drawing and sketching, capturing moments of joy and reflection. Through these practices, I witnessed the slow rebuilding of trust, not just in me, but in the world around them. The months passed. Holidays, birthdays, and ordinary weekends became sacred. Each visit brought new routines, shared laughter, and moments that cemented our bond. Emma's curiosity, once cautious, blossomed into vibrant confidence. Jack's quiet wisdom, tempered by past experiences, gave him a resilience beyond his years. I marveled at their growth, proud of the people they were becoming, and grateful that I could be part of their journey. Each day, each shared meal, each whispered conversation reinforced the truth we had fought so hard to reclaim. Love endures, even when others try to erase it. Then came a late autumn evening, crisp and golden, when Emma and Jack, after helping me rake the fallen leaves, paused and held my hands. "Grandma," Emma said, her voice steady, "we're glad you fought for us. We know they lied. We know you never left, and we're not scared anymore." Jack nodded beside her, small but firm. My heart swelled. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. These words were the culmination of years of struggle, the proof that love, truth, and perseverance could heal wounds that once seemed insurmountable. Winter approached, painting the neighborhood in shades of gray and gold. Each visit with Emma and Jack became a sanctuary against the cold, both outside and inside their fractured family. I planned activities that blended joy and education, baking holiday treats, making handmade gifts, storytelling, and exploring local museums and parks. These routines grounded them, providing a sense of stability they had been denied for so long. Emma's laughter returned fully, a sound I had longed to hear, while Jack's shy smiles began to bloom naturally, no longer constrained by fear or confusion. Our house, once quiet and empty, now echoed with energy and life. The Thanksgiving they had missed last year weighed heavily on all of us. I remembered standing outside their home that morning, the hurt still raw in my chest, Brad's words echoing in my ears. This is only for family. Yet here we were, a year later, building new traditions, redefining family. I wanted the children to feel the warmth of inclusion, even if it came from a grandmother who had been absent in their perception. On the first weekend in December, I suggested we make a family wall in the living room. We pinned photos, drawings, and letters, memories of both past and present. Emma carefully arranged each piece, whispering, "We're building our real family, Grandma." Jack added drawings of our outings, baseball games, and cookie making sessions. Each day, the wall grew, a living testament to love that had survived deception and manipulation. Meanwhile, Brad and Kimberly's desperation escalated. They tried subtle tactics, suggesting alternative plans to cut short visits, questioning the children's behavior, even attempting to influence school staff to monitor and report on their experiences. Each attempt failed. Emma and Jack had begun to voice their experiences confidently, guided by Dr. Chen's strategies for empowerment. One evening, after a particularly tense call with their father, Emma turned to me. "Grandma, why did they lie?" Her eyes were large and sincere. "Because they were afraid," I explained gently. "Afraid of losing control, afraid of feeling powerless. That doesn't make it right, but it helps us understand." Jack, clutching his favorite action figure, added quietly, "I don't want to be afraid anymore." And in that moment, I realized how much of our struggle had been about reclaiming their innocence, their sense of safety, and their right to know the truth. School holiday events became arenas of subtle triumph. Emma's art project for the winter exhibition included a drawing of our memory tree, vibrant and full of life, with tiny paper leaves fluttering in the imagined wind. Jack presented a story he had written about a brave family overcoming obstacles, thinly veiled metaphors for our own journey. Teachers and classmates were unaware of the battles waged behind closed doors, but the children's resilience shone clearly. Every compliment, every smile of approval, reinforced their self worth and began to heal the emotional scars left by lies and manipulation. Even as we built these positive experiences, I was vigilant about legal compliance. Court mandated visitation and therapy sessions were followed meticulously. Dr. Chen monitored progress, reporting both triumphs and setbacks. Brad and Kimberly continued to resist, often showing superficial compliance while privately harboring resentment. During therapy, their defensiveness was palpable. Emma and Jack, however, had developed strategies for self expression and boundaries, speaking openly about their feelings without fear of reprisal. The children's growth became a shield against further manipulation, their voices strong enough to challenge the false narratives their parents had constructed. The season's end brought the first snowfall. Emma and Jack, bundled in scarves and mittens, ran into the yard, laughing as snowflakes landed on their noses. I followed with a thermos of hot cocoa, savoring their unguarded joy. "Grandma, we can make snow angels," Jack shouted, diving into the powder. Emma twirled, spinning and laughing, her cheeks flushed pink. I joined them, falling onto the snow with exaggerated flops, making them giggle uncontrollably. For the first time in years, we were simply a family enjoying the moment, free from tension, free from lies. Later, as we sipped cocoa by the fireplace, Emma whispered, "Grandma, I think we can trust you now." Jack nodded in agreement. Their eyes shone with understanding, recognition, and love. I held them close, feeling the weight of past struggles lift slightly. We had survived deception, manipulation, and alienation. We had reclaimed our bond. And in that warm, quiet moment, I knew the fight had been worth every tear, every sleepless night, every pang of heartache. We were together, and that was all that mattered. The year would end, and with it, the promise of new beginnings. Emma and Jack had learned to navigate the complexities of family dynamics, reclaiming their voices and identities. Brad and Kimberly, isolated by their own choices, began to face the consequences of their actions socially, professionally, and emotionally. Our home became a haven, a place where truth, love, and resilience reigned supreme. And I, finally, could savor the quiet satisfaction of justice achieved, not just legally, but in the hearts of the grandchildren I had fought so tirelessly to protect. The new year arrived, crisp and bright, carrying with it a sense of renewal and quiet triumph. Emma and Jack had settled into a rhythm of love, consistency, and honesty. Our weekends became sacred, each moment a carefully cultivated bond, baking, reading, exploring the city, or simply talking about their dreams. Every laugh, every question, every shy glance of trust reaffirmed what we had fought so hard to reclaim. Their hearts and the truth of our connection. I watched them grow in confidence and joy, free from the shadows of lies that had once clouded their world. Brad and Kimberly's attempts to manipulate the narrative continued, but they were losing ground. Teachers reported the children's improved confidence, their emotional intelligence shining through group activities and classroom interactions. Friends and extended family began noticing the shift too. The children, once quiet and anxious about family events, were now eager participants. Emma, especially, had developed a remarkable sense of discernment. She asked questions directly, expressed her feelings without fear, and no longer allowed the past deception to dictate her emotional responses. Jack, still quieter but equally perceptive, mirrored her courage in his own way, asking for explanations, seeking clarity, and expressing his needs openly. One Saturday afternoon, I planned a special activity, a scrapbook of reconciliation. We gathered photographs, letters, school projects, and little trinkets from the past year. Emma placed each item carefully, narrating memories aloud. Jack added captions and drawings, occasionally stealing a chocolate chip from the tray I had set aside for the project. Grandma, this is our story now, Emma whispered, her eyes glistening. I nodded, fighting back tears. Yes, sweetheart. This is our story, and it's full of love. Each page we created symbolized healing, resilience, and the reclamation of the time that had been stolen from us. The court mandated therapy sessions continued to be pivotal. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly with the children and, reluctantly, with Brad and Kimberly. Their defensiveness was met with patience and calm guidance, though the sessions were often tense. Emma would ask pointed questions, Jack would express frustration, and I observed quietly, offering comfort and reassurance. Slowly, the truth took root in the children's understanding. That deception had been perpetrated against them, that their grandmother had never abandoned them, and that love had been the constant through every challenge. Social consequences for Brad and Kimberly became undeniable. Friends distanced themselves, the community whispered about the family drama, and their carefully constructed public image began to crack. Emma and Jack, however, were shielded by the love and stability they had now internalized. Each success, each moment of joy, each confident assertion of their rights became another brick in the foundation of resilience we were building together. As spring approached, I took the children to a local botanical garden. Emma ran ahead, pointing out flowers and recounting facts she had learned from school. Jack lingered near a fountain, tossing pebbles and watching the ripples. I followed, savoring the simplicity of the moment. No phone calls, no interruptions, no tension, just us. For the first time, I realized that the trauma we had endured was beginning to fade, replaced by trust, understanding, and shared joy. One evening, as we prepared for dinner, Emma turned to me. Grandma, I used to feel like something was missing. Now I feel like I belong. Jack nodded in agreement, his small hand brushing against mine. I swallowed the lump in my throat, overwhelmed by the weight of that simple truth. Every court hearing, every tear, every moment of heartbreak had led us to this point. Our family was whole again, not because the past was erased, but because we had faced it, fought for truth, and refused to let lies define us. Thanksgiving 2026 returned, this time with no tension or exclusion. Brad and Kimberly were present, muted and formal, but Emma and Jack did not falter. We celebrated with laughter, stories, and the smells of roast turkey and baked pies filling the house. The children understood boundaries, they understood truth, and most importantly, they understood love. They had reclaimed their voices, and with them, our family had reclaimed its heart. That night, as I tucked Emma and Jack into bed, Emma whispered, Grandma, thank you for never giving up on us. Jack hugged me tightly, murmuring, I'm glad you fought. I kissed their foreheads, feeling the weight of triumph, relief, and boundless love. In their trust, their laughter, and their hearts, I saw the victory we had fought for, not just legally, but morally and emotionally. The fight had been long, painful, and exhausting, but every moment was worth it. As I sat alone later, reflecting on the journey, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest battles are not against the world, but against the lies that threaten to sever the bonds we hold most dear. And when we fight for truth, with courage, persistence, and love, even the darkest chapters can transform into stories of hope, justice, and unbreakable family ties. I looked at the calendar, marking future visits, holidays, and school events. A life rebuilt, laughter restored, trust renewed, and I smiled, knowing we had triumphed together.